Hey fam, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you about it. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, just in one place. Now download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. You are listening to The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending. Today, we welcome Noah James, co-director of Visceral Roots Dance Company, author, and sickle cell warrior. His Black excellence wears many hats in the arts and well beyond. How are you today, Noah?
I am good, and I'm excited to talk with you. How are you?
I'm great. I've been really excited and wanting to talk to you. You have so many things going on. I'm excited to get into it and dive into it.
Oh, nice.
So let's talk dance first.
Okay.
How did you start in this work? And, also, how did you link up with your co-director, Ashley Gale?
Okay, so that's a great question. I started in this work at a young age. I say maybe around 11 or 12. And as you know, I grew up in the church community like most families. And this art form came to me as a prayer because I did not like church. I did not like institutionalized religion and all of what that comes with. And I asked God to give me something that will make me seek after him more. But I never expected it to be this because most of my family are singers and musicians. And unfortunately, I'm deaf in one ear, so that wasn't my journey. But I approached dance from the singer's perspective. As you know, I have sickle cell disease, so it grew painful as I got older. But when I was much younger, it was less pain and I was more athletic. Fast forward a little bit. I took a chance to put my church and pursuit of God to the side to pursue a dream, and I decided to audition for Push Dance Company, and I'm so happy I did. Because there was companies before that, but this was the first time where I felt that I was seen as an artist, respected as an artist for my unique strengths and skill sets. And I was able to bring to the table something different than the other dancers. And what I liked most about that is we were able to create a work that was more for the people and not so structured in technical dance language. And so in Push Dance Company is where I met Ashley Gale, who is such a phenomenal technician in jazz and ballet. She graduated from UC Irvine, and similar, we met at a time where we both were just really hungry to pursue dance wholeheartedly and not have any inhibitions with that. And so we did what's called Push Fest. They do it every year. We were selected as the first, or some of the first dancers who were able to host this Push Lab at the time, which turned into Push Fest. And it's a way to get mentorship and feedback, and also work with a new set of dancers in the festival. And so from that moment, because it was such an organic experience, because we complemented each other so well, because we spent a lot of time and hours in rehearsal getting to know how one another moved, we just decided to create Visceral Roots Dance Company. And from there, it's just been growing ever since.
That is such an amazing journey to go from one space to another, and from the outside it looks so seamless, but I know internally there were so many shifts and changes within you as a person.
Definitely.
So within Visceral Roots, From what I've seen from you guys, from what you projected on stage, you all really focus on social issues. What's been your process for creating these stage works?
The process has really been inward first, and it wasn't an intentional decision to focus on social issues. It just so happened that I was living on Fruitvale in the Diamond District when Oscar Grant was killed and murdered. And so, like most of the people here in the Bay Area, it was almost like, how could you ignore this? How could you try to live as if this didn't happen?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a natural regurgitation from the pain and the angst that we felt in our communities, and that we felt as Black people and Black artists. And so it was very much inward. Like, we asked ourselves questions about how we felt about the different things that was happening in the Bay Area. And so that's how we came to it highlighting a social experience in the community that kind of left a stain in our home. And so, yes, I don't want to say we sought out to just start it to put on pieces about social issues. It wasn't that. We started out putting on pieces that were deep in our hearts and that deeply affected us, and that also changed us in such a way that we could never dance the same way or create the same way prior to that incident, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It does. It makes so much sense. It's like you see what's happening around you, and it immediately draws into you, it draws out of you, it creates a shift in your internal, it creates a shift in your external, what you're seeing. And, the Bay Area landscape has changed so
Oh
much
yeah.
in the last few years. Like, how do you see that it's changed while you've been making this work specifically about social issues and police violence and homelessness?
Well, the change for me really uh, it really magnified when Obama got into presidency, when Nia Wilson was murdered, when and let me also say that the companies that I were working with was also creating work around the history of the Bay Area, i.e., Point Shipyard with Push Dance Company. Point
Mm-hmm.
Shipyard is in San Francisco. Turns out my family is from Point Shipyard and in San Francisco, so I didn't realize how close to home that was.
Mm.
And then the same thing with Dimensions Dance Theater, dealing with gentrification in Oakland and how things have changed over a large chunk of our adult years.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when we grow up as kids and as teenagers, it's really hard to see that. It's very foggy. But as soon as you become aware, as soon as you come into adulthood, things like racism, things like gentrification, things like healthcare, things like homelessness, they all just begin to just scream at you. And if you're like me, I'm a visual person to the bone. Like, I am always in a state of seeing art, seeing where art and the human experience meets. So I could never like numb myself, and I tried to close myself in, to maybe try to put on blinders. And it got to a point where my emotions and what I was feeling inside was making my body feel pain, like um, in my bones and in my body, but more specifically, emotional pain. And I was having moments of just like wailing and of grieving, similar to that when you grieve when you lose someone dear in your family. And I took it in my prayer time. I was like, okay, God, what is this? Because I didn't realize that this was also a part of my dance journey. But I recognize as a dancer, and every dancer is different, but for me, I am very kinesthetic at nature. So when I'm in the room, I can feel the people in the room. I can feel,
Mm,
their hearts and the things that uh, may make them uncomfortable or uneasy. Oftentimes, we all have this thing that we can do as humans, but a lot of people don't pay it. A lot of people choose to not pay attention to it. But I'm very aware to how life and woes and stresses and uh, unfortunate events really affect us as a society here in the Bay Area. Um, and oftentimes, when people see brutality, when people see injustice, and when people see things not going as they should, they tend to shrink, and they tend to have a lot of fear. And I was there once. I was very fearful of a lot of the things that I would see on the news. But then at the same time, I had to realize that there are people, whether I want to see this or not, who may be afraid of me. And so, how am I adding to
mm.
this world, to this experience, as an artist, as a Black artist, as a Black dancer, when people are experiencing me in performance? I'm sorry, I just went on a tangent, but
No, that's that's totally fine.
that was a very loaded question. It's something that I'm still processing today because it seems like things, I don't want to say things got worse, but things really got a little hectic. Like, we never
Indeed.
really got resolved for most of the brutality, that we still didn't get resolved for Breonna Taylor.
Mhm.
And then not that too, like it began to be, okay, this is not just the Bay Area, this is in the world, this is in the United States of America, this is in Texas. This is in New York and Florida, and you know what I mean. And for
Mhm.
me,
Chicago, Detroit,
it's like,
everywhere.
and so that really made me want to stand up even taller for our community and for the Bay Area, and particularly because we're such a unique place. Much like Las Vegas, much like Hawaii, much like any other major city, the Bay Area is just so special. And so I hold on and I cherish the beautiful memories that I've had as a child of what the Bay Area was for me growing up and today.
Just to kind of tap into what you said earlier about holding awareness in your body, like, talk to me about sickle cell. For those who don't know, like, please describe the condition.
Okay. So, sickle cell disease is a blood disorder. It's hereditary. It happens when your parents have a gene in each of their bodies. My mom, she's anemic. My dad has a gene that's more beta. And so when those two meet, it creates my specific type of sickle cell disease, which is beta thalassemia, which is a big word for basically saying that I have the sickle cell experience, but I'm not fully anemic as some may be. There is different types of sickle cell. And so for me, growing up, I had a lot of pain crises. And what that means is that if there's like a weather change from hot to cold, like we're experiencing now, I feel it in my body. When there's stress, when I am having an overwhelming experience and having a hard time to grounding myself in it, my body tends to grow in pain. If there's an infection or a cold, and so when when I turned 21, or in my 2021 years, at the start of my career with Push, I was diagnosed with bone infarction. What that means is that my bones are slowly decaying as we grow with time. And also the pain gets worse with time. And so I witnessed that. My first 2 years with Push Dance Company was phenomenal. I toured, I got to see the world, I got to challenge myself as a technician, as an athlete. But by the third year, there were certain things that I could no longer do, that I once
Mm.
did in the years prior. And so it kind of feels like elephants are trampling over your bones, or it
Ooh.
feels like glass shattering. When you see the glass shatter, the ricochet of that, like if you were to loop it, is kind of what I experience in my bones. I feel very fragile sometimes. I often
Mm-hmm.
feel like my bones are like 60, even though I am 30. So yes, it's a full disease. It's not contagious, but as a result, I've had to mature quicker. I've had to have a lot of uh, time accepting things and
Mm-hmm.
accepting pain, and learning how to suffer long but not become bitter. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I don't want to say I'm angry about it. I'm grateful that I have been blessed to hold this disease, but it's not something that I would wish on my worst enemy, because people often say that it could be slightly worse than having a child. It can be slightly worse than a migraine. Um, or similar to that, if when you break a bone, that pain is something that is a repetitive experience for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that and kind of giving more context to it,
Yeah.
because I feel like there's not been a lot of awareness in the media and just in, local Bay Area community about this particular disease, but it affects so many of us, um, people of color, especially Black people,
Yeah.
and like helping to bring, faces and names and still seeing people putting their best foot forward is really helpful.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the opioid epidemic?
The opioid epidemic.
Yes.
Just a little bit. I've only seen like the effects of it of people, outside in the street, but
Right.
not so much had any, I wouldn't say quite like close encounters with it.
So let's just use that example. The opioid
Hmm.
epidemic in the streets, of course, people do abuse drugs. And that's beyond the recreational drug use. These are heavy narcotics, things that people
Hmm.
sell. They can make a lot of money from it. And so one of my isolated experiences, much like what we experience as a community in the Bay Area, is that I have to face racism in the hospital setting, which is a personal journey of mine. But we are often ostracized and stereotyped as a result of this opioid epidemic, even though we didn't ask for it, even though these prescriptions that we have been written are things that we need for our body. Um, we are directly affected by the negative stereotypes and the people who do abuse the drug system, and not because we have sickle cell, but because we're Black. And so
Hmm.
oftentimes my painful experience is not believed to the person who has very little knowledge about sickle cell. I thank you for this, because it does need to be um, shouted out in the healthcare communities, particularly that we are just as important as the individual with cancer, as the individual with diabetes, as the individual with lupus.
Hmm.
There are so many health disparities in our community. But one of the things that I see, even to this day, no matter how intelligent I am, no matter how much I can articulate my experience, no matter how much I can look a white counterpart in the eye who may be hired there to serve me, if they feel any type of way, and I don't single out just the white counterpart. I've also experienced people of color, ethnic people of color, have apprehension with treating me in the hospital simply because of their feelings about drug use and their feelings about concerns of overdose and etc. So I just wanted to say, yes, I agree with you. This is something in the community that does need a lot more just care because
Hmm.
racism is not just what you see on TV. It's not just with brutality. You experience it like our Black sisters experience it in the workforce. We also experience it in the hospitals where we can be on our dying bed and we can be needing something that may very much be necessary for us to live. And I
Hmm.
just worry and cry out for those who have lost their life as a result of apprehension of care and as a result of racism and just people just looking at us as if we are all addicts in some way.
Yes, I agree. And just to like even more so piggyback upon that, like it's that concern about folks being addicts, but it's also uh non-black people being perpetuated with these stereotypes that black people are strong. You know, it's like, oh, he's such a strong black man. She's a strong black woman. They are less prone to vulnerability,
They
and
must
that is
have
not the
a higher
case.
pain threshold than any other
Exactly,
in
which is
America. Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like no, and this is and I'm glad there are so many people like yourself, and like I'm seeing more and more on social media and the news of like people really shouting out and highlighting and having panels about these preconceived notions and these prejudices that
Yeah.
we need for non-black healthcare professionals to overcome and really have more succinct training about.
Well, one thing that I will say, and I'll say this really quickly, is that it's so important for us to use our voice. Like, we have
Hmm.
rights, and not just use our voice, but to read. So many of us in our
Come on,
community.
reading is fundamental.
Fundamental, my love, like fundamental. Because if you don't read, you don't know your rights. You don't know how you can protect yourself. You don't know that you can file a complaint, that you can sue, that you can
Hmm.
really do what you need to advocate for yourself. So you got to read. You got to read, and you got to let your voice be heard. Because if we all uh, remain silent and continue to carry on the traditions of our ancestors of not speaking to one another, of holding secrets, of holding things in, of not speaking
Hmm.
to our elders or our white counterparts or whatever, any type of thing that is silencing you is just not for you. Like, you have to be able to live in a space where you are heard and that you communicate what your experience is. Otherwise, you are just allowing yourself to die willingly.
And speaking of being hurt, like when did you start writing about your condition?
It's so shout out to the many mentors in my life and the big sisters and the big brothers. I'm an only child, but I had the privilege of being around powerful Black leaders and educators. And I have a sister named Brandolyn Castine, who really took me under her wing while she was finishing up her degree at UC Berkeley, while she was writing her own books. She really gave me a space to be an artist, be a person first. Oftentimes, when you go to church, you are so gung ho in this pursuit of, let's say, being perfect, and it's not real. It's not something that is something that would serve you. So she really gave me keys to my freedom as an artist, as a writer, by holding space for me while she pursued her process. And so I have been writing since before dance, because it was an outlet for me. I because I was having a painful experience that was very isolated and different, and I'm one in my entire family who has it, no one else does. It became hard to relate to my family. It became hard to connect with my family as I was growing because I was trying to find words to communicate what I was feeling. So journaling, um, um, editing drafts, uh, listing, reading about uh, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, James Baldwin,
Yes, shout
um,
out to Black writers.
all of the Black writers, right? Like they really laid a foundation of, yes, put words to your Black experience. It's necessary. So that's it. I've been journaling before time.
Before time. Love it.
Yeah. Like, and it sucks because I have so many journals and poems and things that just remain unpublished. So my first novel, The Gift of Pain, Bookmarks of a Sickle Cell Warrior, I that is 5 years of select poems and
Wow.
experiences. So I kind of felt rushed to put it out because if I didn't, it would never be out. And so I write differently now than I did 5, 10 years ago.
Hmm.
So this first volume is one of three, and I'm working on the volume 2 now.
Okay. I love that. It's like sometimes you have to just throw the thing out there, and it's like, because otherwise, you'll get into that perfectionist mode and be like, oh, but it needs this. Oh, but it needs that.
Hmm.
Just put it out there and then you receive what comes after, you
Trust
know?
the process, yes.
And with that, I'm going to be reading one of your poems
Oh,
called Hopeful Lee.
okay.
Hope lighter than an ant can shift realities and create an outer space where you can breathe. You hope to discover something beyond the rock on high that you build upon, but what's higher than he? Impatient, hopeful for a brighter future, a deeper love that complements the love you receive from God. For a swifter intellect to make wiser decisions and not fuck hope in the heart with foolish maybes, foolish babes, foolish I love you, and foolish are you. Foolish you will remain because you never really know anything. Perhaps foolish are you for not hoping for things from a substance called faith. That is, oh my, that's very succinct, but also very deep. The questioning of faith and hope, daring to hope. Where where were you when you wrote this? Like, what were you experiencing?
I was in the Bay Area, you know.
I mean, like health wise, relationship wise, just artistic wise. Where were you living in that space when this came to this
So
piece
I
specifically?
was, I was. First of all, thank you for reading it.
Yeah.
I was in a transitional space. I say early 20s, mid 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and I was at the peak of being a part of institutions and institutionalized learning and experiences to the point of depletion. And also noticing when I would join in worship experiences at church or in conferences and etc. That sometimes people are separated from their spiritual journey. Sometimes people numb their spiritual experience to hope to experience it at a later time. Sometimes people don't have faith in their youth, specifically because they see faith as something that you have as an elder or when you get older. So that poem, as you know, is a play on words, and it's a regurgitation of one of the frustrations I have with the church community, which is why do we go in cycles? Why do we not allow our greatness to be beyond the four walls of the church? Why do we judge one another? Why do we criticize someone else's faith journey and faith experience because we don't have the courage to own and live in our own faith journey and experience? So that's where I was. I was in a space right before I completely decided to leave the four walls of the church to try God in an area that just wasn't a building. Yeah.
Yes, because he is not a building, okay? He don't just live there and you just go visit him. He's in your heart. He or she is in your heart. You got to carry it with you and take different pathways to deepen that relationship. I'm
Yeah.
glad you spoke about that.
Yeah, like I said, I never liked church. I was a kid watching Fighting Temptations, seeing Beyonce, and then really identifying with that experience because so many people, so many Black families see talent first in the church, but they also see what it means to be jealous of someone else's talent. We also see hatred. We also see so much darkness within the church as well. So yes, I don't understand why people think you go to church and there's no more darkness. There's no more negativity. There's no, that harmony that you see in the world is everywhere. It's not just within the building. And so that was that was my goal in trying to challenge the believer to think outside of their own church four walls and to think outside of the limitations that they put on their journey toward God, So
Take the limits off. Don't get me started.
yes, all of the above.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what's been so with the writing and then creating movement, what's the difference and similarities between the two, and have there I don't know if I've seen any before, but have there been movement collaborations with your poems so far?
Yes, great question. This year was the first year where I decided to allow my words to be inspiration for movement. But prior to this, most of my rehearsal process, even with the company, has some type of writing prompt, some writing focal point, because I find that for dancers in particular, it's a challenge for them to both be human and also a dancer. It's a fine line between being a dancer and for the athleticism of it, and then being a dancer for the artistry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is no difference between the writing and the dancing. The major similarity between both is the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to be transparent, the willingness to be honest, the willingness to be aware of your imperfections and still love them at the same time. So I think that's the major similarity. Besides it being on paper and dance being something that you can't really put on paper unless you're writing up some type of curriculum or something, but I don't see a difference because I approach both with the same openness and with the same transparency as it relates to my journey and my experience.
Yes, openness and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us where we can find your book. Again, The Gifts of Pain, Bookmarks of a Sickle Cell Warrior.
It's available on Amazon. You can type that title in, or Noah James. You can also find that link on any of my socials at I Know a Place, which is INOAH Place, PLACE. Pretty soon we should see it maybe reaching a larger market. But right now, it's available on Amazon.
Awesome. And see, thank you dropped your social media, which I was just going to ask you to do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We will also have all this information in the caption and on our website. Thank you so much for joining us today, Noah. This has been another episode of The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending.